Hello, my name is Christian, and today I will be talking about standardized testing. The case I present to you today is that standardized testing within the United States educational system discriminates and subjugates against several classes of this nation's students who are faced with many differences growing up. Regardless of whether or not this issue is happening unintentionally or intentionally, it is still happening. A survey taken by more than 1,500 NEA, National Education Association members, concluded that 70% do not believe that their primary state assessments are developmentally appropriate for their students. In training to become a teacher, according to the teachers themselves, they learn that when it comes to students, one size does not fit all. A student capable of learning how to do addition and subtraction at one specific time in their life may not be the case for another student. But that same student might possess the ability to learn how to read, whereas the other student might not. Every child is faced with different experiences, situations, and inhibitions in their lives, and unfortunately, standardized tests do not adhere to that standard of assessing each student equally, as they're supposed to be designed to do. Within each school system, there are many social and economic disparities that children face on a daily basis that truly can't be resolved unless everyone magically possessed a humanistic perspective on life. There are many other problems and factors that play a huge role in determining a child's behavior, who is born, and these children being born into poverty, which are the students that I'm talking about right now. According to a panel of researchers and educators who gathered at the American Museum of Natural History in New York on May 3rd, 2016, these disparities, which can be specifically identified as ACEs, or for short, the longer term, adverse childhood experiences, such as neglect or abuse, are the cause of bad behavior, which may be the result of a deeply rooted biological response to toxic stress. In our current educational system, using disciplinary acts have gotten profusely stricter throughout the past 2 decades, which the cause of this can be rooted back to the pressure put on students and teachers in preparing for standardized tests. Stated in the book From Neurons to Neighbors, written by Dr. Jack Shonkoff and Deborah Phillips, it's hard to realize how serious toxic stress is, but it's critical to recognize it's a valid clinical concept, a neurological phenomenon that taxes the body's immune system, debilitates your focus, and transforms the architecture of the human brain. Now, the question that stands with all this information provided is, how do you expect students who are faced with these problems to do well on something like a standardized test, assuming that their life doesn't inhibit them from taking the test in the first place? When it comes down to it, the fact of the matter is, these businesses who administer standardized tests are just out to make money, and much like a domino effect, the schools are also out to make money, which then translates to making money at the expense of students and taxpayers. Many school districts lack sufficient funds to be able to accommodate the number of students in their districts, and this can lead to issues such as more toxic stress, competition among schools, and in many cases the resignations or the thought of resigning from teachers. Known as the Teacher Advancement Program, or TAP for short, established in 1999, it ties educators' salaries and bonuses to teachers' effectiveness in teaching the curriculum and the students' academic growth. In recent years, another technique known as value-added analysis is basically the same idea as TAP, grading teachers based on student test scores. The disparities I stated before are the catalysts to this issue faced by teachers. The problem is that there are just too many outside factors and others who should be held accountable for a student's growth and development than by just simply determining this growth in teachers' salary based on test scores. Another survey taken by the National Education Association found that 75% of teachers enjoy their jobs, but nearly half, 45% to be exact, have considered quitting something they love just because of standardized testing. A quote stated by U.S. Education Secretary Arne Duncan stated that too much standardized testing was sucking the oxygen out of the room and causing undue stress. The bottom line is that standardized tests are used to measure intelligence and assign labels by categorizing students based on a structure geared towards a certain individual, if any individual at all. According to Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman, a cognitive psychologist, presented his opinion on the matter of standardized tests and IQ tests in his book, Ungifted, Intelligence Redefined. He promotes that he is not against these tests as a whole, but rather against standardizing minds and ignoring the fact that there are multiple paths to the same outcome, and that engagement in it is an extremely important aspect of the equation. In his book, he talks about how he explores the minds of many different young minds and found that with many of them, much like himself, just need to be inspired or engaged in something that's meaningful to them. Only then will you unlock the door to transform them into what society's eyes sees as gifted. Through his own story, he explains how he was faced with a learning disability, and at an early age, he fell behind because of this. He spent his whole life trying to explain to people that he was intellectually capable of expressing his intelligence in a different way, and standardized testing was not the best format for him to express that. Now he stands with a PhD from Yale with the simple idea that instead of evaluating students, we must find a way to inspire them. This requires teachers and everyone else who is a part of the evaluation process to take every child's dream seriously without everyone else who is without judgment, and to provide them with the resources they need to achieve them. It might seem cliche, but the sad truth is that many children are not reaching their academic potential because we are content with these standardized tests dictating a child's future. Thank you.
All right. Well, the proposition has multiple parts to it. The discussion about it being discriminatory and subjugating people sounds pretty controversial, but then I don't really hear much about those issues in the supporting parts of the speech. It's more about stress issues and alternative ways of evaluating folks and the impact that standardized tests have on the teaching profession. So I think that you probably need to modify the proposition a little bit more to reflect the factual issues that you're dealing with here. There's no preview of what the supporting structure is going to be, and in the body of the speech there's not really an organizational outline that's able to be followed by the average listener. There's information in the speech that I think is pretty good, but sometimes it feels like where you're jumping from one piece of information to a completely different subject in the next sentence, and that is a problem. It needs to be grouped together more effectively. Like I said, I did think that you had some sources that you cited pretty consistently. There's a couple of pieces of testimony. There's some nice statistical information in the speech as well, but the body of the speech feels like it's fragmented. There's a place where you need to talk about this stress level that the kids have. I guess the term is ACE to describe it, and how it fits into the test process was not explained. There's all kinds of stuff that could be producing the stress, and you seem to be attributing it to the tests, but in your own argument you say that there are all these other things that can be contributing to the stress that the kids get as well. So how that connects it to the standardized test was not very clear at all. like I said, the teachers are affected by the standardized test, and it appears that there's an argument to be made here that it's having a negative impact on the way teachers are able to function in the classroom, either in evaluating their students or offering them some kind of assistance. But that's a little vague. It's mostly what you have here is the way the teachers think about maybe quitting it, because I don't know if that's because the standardized tests are too hard to do, because they think it's taking up all their time, or, for example, because they're being evaluated by that process. The TAP process that you make a reference to, I don't know if that's a nationwide program. I don't know where it's being administered. I know that the vast majority of teachers are not held accountable for their students' test scores in the way that affects their salary placement. So what's happening here, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I'm saying that I don't know how typical it is, and I don't think that you've described what the system is very clearly. The information from Kaufman at the end with multiple paths to success, I think that everybody understands that. I don't think that's particularly controversial. And he took all of these tests and managed to get a PhD, like you said. So how did it restrict him? That seems counterintuitive to the point that you're making. There's a lot of reading in the presentation. You want to try and speak to us a little bit more. And it was a little longer than it should have been. All right. Thank you.